Howdy, welcome to your help video for quiz 2.04. Alright, so here's your need to know info. There is a lot. First of all, you need to know the area of a triangle. We talked about this last semester. It's 1/2 times the base times the height. And I really like here how it says perpendicular height, because I just want to remind you that the height has to be perpendicular to the base. So sometimes that's one of the sides of the triangle, sometimes that's in the middle of the triangle, and sometimes it's outside of the triangle. But whatever side you let be your base, please don't forget that the height has to be perpendicular to it. Right? If you go to the doctor's office and they want to measure your height, you would stand up straight against the wall. You would be perpendicular to the floor. You would never lean against the wall with your feet really far away. That wouldn't be a height, right? So the height always has to be perpendicular. All right, we also need to know the area of a rectangle, which is base times height. Area of a parallelogram is also base times height. But again, you have to find that height. That height has to be perpendicular to the base. And then we need the area of a semicircle. And we just talked about area of a circle is pi r squared. And a semicircle just means half of a circle, so you just take half of that area formula. So you can do pi r squared divided by 2, or you can do 1/2 times pi r squared. All right, so let's get started. The first one, what is the area of this polygon? Okay, so the way we tackle this is we divide these into shapes we know. So I always look for things that kind of stick out first. That's a triangle. So I'm going to cut that and I'm going to find the area of that yellow triangle. And then I also need to find the area of this shape, which is a rectangle. All right, so let's tackle each of those. First, let's find the area of that rectangle. The area of a rectangle is base times height. My base here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And my height is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. So the area of the rectangle would be 5 times 6, which is 30 units. Now I need to go and do the triangle. And I should have picked a color other than yellow, because that might be hard to see. So the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So it doesn't matter which side we let be the base, and I always like to pick the easiest side possible. So the only side that actually follows the grid is this side. So I'm going to let that be my base. So I'm going to say that my base is 6. Now here's the thing, if this vertical line is my base, I need to ask myself, well, what is perpendicular to a vertical line? And in order for it to be perpendicular to vertical, it would have to be horizontal. So I'm going to draw in the height right there because that would be perpendicular to my base. And then I can count it. That is 1, 2, 3 units. So my area is 1/2. The base was 6. The height was 3, which would be 9. And then because I want to know the area of the whole polygon, I take those two figures and I add them together. So I'm going to take my 30 plus my 9, and the area of the entire polygon would be 39 units squared. All right, let's check out the next one. Again, we got this really funky shape going on, and we want to know the area of the polygon. What we need to do is we need to break it apart into shapes that we know how to find the area of. So I'm going to start off, anytime I see a little strange point, I'm going to turn that into a triangle. So I'm going to have that green triangle, and I'll go ahead and find the area of that green triangle while I'm on it. So remember, area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. I'm going to pick the base that's the easiest to find. So anything that follows the grid, I'm going to let that be the base. So I'm just going to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then remember, the height has to be perpendicular to it. Since that's a horizontal line, a vertical line would be perpendicular. And so that's 2 units. So the area of the green triangle would be 7. Now I need to divide my figure up a little bit more. Let me use red this time. So I have this little piece over here that's going to make another triangle. And so again, I'm going to use that area of a triangle formula. 1/2 base times height. I'm going to let this bottom be the base. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this would be the height because it is perpendicular. And so if I multiply that out, the area would equal, let's see, 6. I still have a funky shape down here. I still can't find the area of that shape, so I need to do some more dividing or splitting it apart. So I'm going to take this piece right here and I'm going to turn that one into a triangle. All right, so again, we're going to use the area of a triangle formula. So the area equals 1/2 base times height. I'm going to pick the easiest side for the base, which is up here. We've already counted this one. This one was 7, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. And since that base is horizontal, the perpendicular would have to be vertical, so this would be my height. And that is 3 units long. So let's see, this one's going to be a decimal. 7 times 3 is 21, divided by 2 is 10.5. And then I still have a little bit more of my figure that I haven't done yet. And this one just happens to be a rectangle. And the area of a rectangle is base times height, so we can just count. 1, 2, 3, 4 for my base, and 1, 2, 3 for my height. So this area is 12. Okay, so now that I've found the area of shapes that I know, triangles and rectangles, I need to go back and add them all together to get the area of the entire polygon. So 7 plus 6 plus 10 point, oops, what am I doing? Writing that 10.5 all kinds of in the wrong spot. Plus 10.5 plus 12. That's supposed to be a plus sign. All right, so if we add all 4 of those shapes together, we get 35.5. So the entire thing is 35.5 units squared. Okay. So the curved part of this figure is a semicircle. What is the best approximation for the area of the figure? So again, we need to divide it into shapes that we know how to find the area of. So I'm going to divide this into a triangle and a semicircle. And I can find the area of both of those shapes and then I can add them together. So let me start off with the triangle. We've been doing that one a lot. Area equals 1/2 base times height. I'm going to let this horizontal line be the base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then remember the height has to be perpendicular, which this one already is, so I can just count it. So for the area of the triangle, we get 14 units squared. And now we need to find the area of a semicircle. So the area of a circle is pi r squared. We just did that in our last quiz. So the area of the entire circle is pi r squared. If we want a semicircle, that's half of a circle, so we could just divide that by 2. We could get that answer and cut it in half. Okay, so the tricky thing here, though, is we have to figure out what the radius is. It's somewhere right in here, but we need to know that length. So we're going to need to find the length of this entire diameter and then divide it in half. Now, I hope you guys remember Pythagorean theorem, because if you look at this purple triangle, it actually forms a right triangle, and so we can use Pythagorean theorem to find that diameter. So we said that this side was 4 and this side was 7, so the first thing I'm going to use is I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem to figure out my diameter. So 4 squared plus 7 squared equals c squared. Let's see, 4 squared plus 7 squared is 65. And then you would square root it. So the diameter would be the square root of 65, which is like 8.06 approximately. So I'm going to go ahead and take that diameter, which is the distance across the circle, and I'm going to divide it by 2 to turn it into a radius. So if I take my 8.06, blah, 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 and divide it by 2, I get that my radius is approximately 4.03. Now these are approximate because I am using decimals and I'm rounding. But now that I know my radius, I can go over here and find the area of the semicircle. So the area equals pi times the radius squared divided by 2. So I'm going to type in 4.03 squared. I'm going to divide that number by 2. And I'm left with area equals 8.12 pi. Now, the reason I didn't multiply it by 3.14 is because if you look at each of your answer options, it has pi in the answer. So I don't want to plug in 3.14. I want to leave it as pi. All right, so now I'm going to take my two areas. I'm going to take my area of my triangle and my area of my semicircle, and I'm going to add them together. So if we do that, the area of the triangle is 14, so it can't be 28. And then I'm going to add that to the area of the semicircle, which was 8.125. So that one's my answer. All right. This figure is made up of a rectangle and a parallelogram. What is the area of this figure? So first, you need to be able to identify what's what. So if we look right here, if I cut this, boop, right there. Oh, that looks rough. That's my parallelogram. If I could draw with straight lines, it might look a little prettier, but anyway, so this is my parallelogram. And then my other figure, what's left, is going to be my rectangle. All right, so let's go ahead and find the area of a parallelogram first. Both of the area formulas are the exact same. They're both area equals base times height. Now in the parallelogram, you just have to be really careful. The base is easy to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But this diagonal length is not the height. Remember, we keep saying over and over and over again, the height has to be perpendicular to the base. So you have to draw in the height wherever you want to. I'm going to draw it right there. And that's 1 unit. So my area of the parallelogram would be 6 units squared. Now I need to go back and do the area of the rectangle. Now this one takes a little bit more work because none of the sides follow the grid, so you can't just count the side lengths. So in this case, you can either use distance formula or Pythagorean theorem. I'm a big fan of Pythagorean theorem, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a right triangle off of each side. And then I'm going to throw it into the Pythagorean theorem. So 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9. So this first side length here is the square root of 10. So I'm going to call that my base. And then I'm going to figure out my height. And remember, if it's a rectangle, we know it's a 90-degree angle, so we know this side has to be perpendicular. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw my right triangle again. This side length is 2. Let's see, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to do Pythagorean theorem again. This is just kind of over here in scratch work. 2 squared plus 6 squared. And that would give me the square root of 40. So I'm going to multiply that base times height together. So the square root of 10 times the square root of 40. And that equals a nice pretty area. The area is 20 units squared. And now that I have both of those pieces, I can add them together to get the entire area, which would be 26 units squared. Since I'm so close to being out of time, let me just talk you through the last problem. Since this side is 7, I know this side is also 7. If the entire length is 12, I can do 12 minus 7 to find this purple part of the triangle is 5. Same thing here. This whole side is 5, so this whole side is 5. And then 5 minus 3 would give me 2. Then I plug it into my area formulas for a rectangle and a triangle, solve them, and then add those two areas together to get 40 units squared. Good luck on your quiz!